Unmask. This week we have the privilege of having Omer Avital. Omer Avital is an extraordinary jazz musician and composer. He came and talked to us about jazz, but the conversation was not about jazz. It was about how he moved to New York with nothing, how he made it, and how basically one of the extraordinary things for me was that creating jazz, creating a band, being successful is very similar no matter where you are. We really dive into the tools it takes and the discipline it takes to create something extraordinary, whether it's in art, it's in business, or it's in other things. It's going to be a fascinating conversation. Omer,
Hey,
thanks for being here.
thanks for bringing me.
Let's just jump right into it. Why jazz?
Well, interesting. I mean, it's hard to answer these questions, but
know.
music, things happen sort of when you're young, and I liked music in general. I showed signs of talent, and my mom kind of took me and made me play music. It's like, oh, you're talented. Then we had a good conservatory in Give a Time. My hometown, she's still great teacher. So I started playing classical guitar because we had the guitar at home. And, I got into Talmayelin, the school we went to together, and then played classical. And then I started like, oh, it's not really my thing. Then I heard one guy in school playing some blues, and I was shocked. I was amazed. It was like a trance, playing.
Explain to me, because I'm not a musician. So you came from classical training, but then you said something about jazz hit you.
Exactly.
What was the thing?
The thing is, when you play classical, which I still love, you play the music that is written and it's proper and you're focused and it's wonderful. But when you play jazz and blues, you just go with what you feel, and so it's connected to rock, which we all grew up on, and whether it's Pink Floyd or whatever, the rock, bending the strings. So I remember seeing, and I remember the guy, you probably remember him, and he was like playing in the hallway in the break, and it was like playing, and I was like, this is what I want to do.
That's so cool.
And then I heard people also practicing jazz, and I knew nothing about it, and it felt like magic. Like they didn't have music, they didn't read anything, they were just going with it. And back then I thought I would never be able to play it. But so bit by bit, slowly I got into it, and then at some point I was like, I'm switching. I just jumped. But it just basically felt more comfortable, more natural, more like where I came from. You can move, you can talk. It was still intellectual enough, but very rhythmic and emotionally different.
Yeah. So this is Unmasked is not about music, right? It's about leadership and top performing and everything. But the reason I asked is because it's still magic. I love jazz, right? It's magical to me. So walk me through, as someone who doesn't understand. It sounds like a very organized chaos, which is some degree, that's how life is, or when you run businesses, it's organized chaos. So walk someone like me who's clueless about that balance between chaos and organization. And is that the reason you fell in love with it or not?
Yeah, but first of all, there's the magic that you just see from the side, and you're like, ooh, that's, there's something about it. And then when I was playing classical, I mean, you need to want to be able, or you need to have some talent to improvise, meaning that you're in a tough situation and you could make a change immediately and be cool. And even when I played classical, I figured that when I made a mistake, I could improvise and get out of it.
Could you?
Yeah.
Even classical?
As a young performer.
Okay.
And I was like, there was something, I was like, oh, okay, interesting. I have this ability to, and then when you play jazz, you have to have this calmness, where things are going to go wrong. I mean, you don't know what's going on, but there is order in the basis of it all. It's hard to explain in non-musical terms. Basically, you have the format, you're following some path, but anything can happen, and you have to be ready. And so you train yourself to be ready for anything. Somebody's throwing this up, you're going to go here, you're going to go here. So it's really, really fragments of seconds,
Oh, I love that. So I love it because it's not about yes, it is about the music, but also it's really a framework. It's you gotta master the basics. If I understand
Exactly.
correctly, and then
Really
you can
master
play
the
on
basics.
top of it.
Yeah. So you're doing two things as a jazz musician. You're very masterful and you're knowledgeable, and at the same time you're open for anything to change and go a different direction.
How do you know if you're going the right direction?
You don't. I mean, they say there's no mistakes. There's only anything that happens is how you take it. So it's very
Yeah, but again, not to. I really want to understand it. So when I'm a guest at your, one of the club that you own, Wilson, and some sessions are magical, and some sessions I go to, they're okay, right? And they're both. So there is a level of something goes well and things are failing and
Yeah.
not doing well. So
Yeah.
how do
Well,
you find the
first-
balance? When do you know when things are going well and when things are
Well,
not
it
going well?
depends on the mood, depends on the right people, and the chemistry, obviously. But even the same band can sound completely different on two different sets, because you don't really know, you can't plan everything. Because we were making, I mean, you plan, you have the song, so the song is great. But how do I feel today? Am I tired? How's the piano player feeling today? How is the audience? There's so many things that at some point. I've realized, I mean, but it's like that with all music, even classical, I think, or when you go to speak, you don't know. It depends on how you feel, your ideas, the people in front of you, the air. So you realize at some point that you have to let go a little bit, and that extra thing that we don't control, we have to understand more.
So do you rely on, because I'm thinking about like top performing, right? So in businesses, in sports, and you have a foundation
Definitely.
of expertise. Like you feel comfortable, you can rely on your expertise. So you walk into a session, especially now it's different. We'll talk later on about your like later on. But when you start, you walk into a room, you don't choose the other players. Do you choose the other musicians or?
In the very beginning, you just get thrown to a situation.
So you have no idea if they're great, not.
They're not great.
It's like a blind date.
They're not great, and you're not great. I mean, the first times I tried to improvise, I felt like I was sinking in water. Like I was, it's literally that feeling physically because, imagine if you have a classical piece or a rock piece, you know what you're playing, so you have a part. All of a sudden, you don't have a part, and they say, okay, now solo. And you're drowning, and you're trying to stay afloat. Literally. Like,
And what makes you come back? Because most people, they'll drown twice and they'll stop, right? So it
Yeah.
seems like it's part of the DNA of jazz is the point
Absolutely.
is to fail, right? Or
yeah, no, you
until
have
get better.
to. Oh, you have to. The failures are constant, but you have. I don't know. I don't even remember. I think the first time I tried it, I felt so bad. I don't know what made me go back. Like, I think I just had to because it was like a session, a lesson, a part of my education. And then after a couple of times, it was okay, and people smiled, and I was like, okay, I think I'm
You got the
getting it.
groove.
I'm getting it. And then you learn, okay, you know what? I can hang on to here. I can hang on to. You learn how to hang on to things and structures and express something here.
Okay, so I
It's-
want to break it down, okay? Because again, I'm listening to you from a non-musician perspective, right? So
sure.
you say to hang on to things, right? So what is that? Because the whole point is to take this, you're a top performer, you're successful, to take it and implement it in areas. This is not about jazz.
Sure.
This is about top performing for me. Let's dive into that one. You say hang on to things. How do you know that there's something to hang on to? In the middle of, you're stressed, you're performing. It's the biggest fear in the world is being in front of audience. The second, biggest fear for people. So how do you know?
Well, first of all, you have to have some kind of talent in the area. For example, public speaking, don't have that talent.
Well, you're very good on podcasts, so good.
I mean, yeah, you're making me feel comfortable. Let's say if I have to go in front, I'm just giving an example.
Yeah.
If I have to go in front of hundreds of people and just speak without preparing, it would be very, very challenging. But I found that with music, I have the talent to fake it a little bit and just do something so it goes well. And if it doesn't go well, I'm okay. I'm not dead. You know what I mean? I had that. So let's say it's a talent. I mean, it's something that I was born with.
Do you think something you can develop or something you're born
You can
with?
definitely develop, but I think there has to be something like where you're not shattered. You know what I mean? That you still survive the failures. Like one time I played in when I finished elementary school, and they knew I was talented, and I was going to Talmud Eileen, so they're like, yeah.
Tamerlane is one of the top, so maybe the top high school for arts in
Yeah,
Israel.
so
Yeah.
they were like, Omer, why don't you play a piece? And I was just hanging with my friends, and my classical guitar was somewhere, and apparently one of my silly friends just completely tuned it off. It was off tune, and I played out of tune, and it was kind of terrible. But I was like, So I figured I wasn't shattered when those things happened or when a mistake happened. And so I think that's kind of a talent, maybe because I knew I had something in music that was strong enough. But then you learn to hang on to, okay, if I do this, then I'm cool, I'm okay. Like you have a knowledge, like you say, you master the basics, the foundations that will always make you feel comfortable. And on top of that, there's the day.
So you develop anchors.
Anchors,
and then you
exactly.
can always go. You can
Yeah,
be
it's like
safe
any
and
other
go to
thing.
those anchors.
Like
but then you
miles-
take higher and higher risks as you
Exactly.
get better. Is that-
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how high level I'm doing it. If I write a symphonic piece, there'll be milestones, and there'll be places where I can hang on to. I mean, I think it's life in general, and then you take a higher risk and a higher risk. You know what I mean? But it's always like I think Charlie Parker said, a great saxophone player, you learn, then you need to forget everything. So, because you want to do something. So you're always, in jazz, I think it's just extreme because you're very knowledgeable, and then you want to be like in the moment. So that art form is very special. You can find it in other art forms and other things in life, but I think that's what I liked in jazz. But I also love classical. I love classical Arabic music. I think as Israelis, we are very, very multicultural naturally. Like we have different disciplines. I think when we grow up, we already have it.
Yeah, you grew up with. Your mom is Yemenite. Is that
Yemenite,
right?
Moroccan,
And Moroccan,
and Israeli.
My mom is Swiss, but my neighbors were playing, Syrian music when I grew up. So you get exposed.
Yeah,
to
and
all
my
those-
teachers were Russians.
Yes, exactly,
So
yeah.
and Germans. So at some point, you just your day goes through a few cultures, and the more I grow up, I realize it. That's a big gift, and that's why we are like this, and that's why jazz, I think, caught on in Israel after we brought it, so to speak. But because it makes sense, what I mean. You're an improviser, you know how to deal with this. You're not stressed with different cultures, But jazz to me was a big school, and also for life because it's life is the same, business is the same.
Yeah, it sounds to me, and please correct me, that jazz forces you to step out of your comfort zone, right? But if you
Absolutely.
hang out there, it becomes part of your comfort zone. Now you step further out of the comfort zone. Like you keep on expanding what comfortable is as you play jazz.
I think so, and sometimes I have to get out of jazz because
Yeah.
jazz becomes too comfortable.
Give me an example. Like what was like you felt too comfortable in jazz. You're like, I'm going to go something else. Is that when you
I
learned
remember
the
when,
oud or something
yeah,
like play the
I
oud,
think
you
at
know?
some point,
Yeah.
it came from both. I don't know if feeling comfortable, but I wanted to explore with more sounds or bigger instruments. And then I realized, I'm from Israel at some point. You know how your identity always, it happens at some point in my 20s, mid to late 20s. And yeah, I wanted to learn Israeli songs. And I was like, what is that? And then I remember I studied those kinds of styles. And I wanted to fuse it with jazz. I wanted to bring it to jazz. And it was a stretch because you bring jazz musicians are used to one sound, and all of a sudden it's like Middle Eastern sound, so it's uncomfortable. Or bringing jazz into Israeli music, like what I'm doing today. But 15 or 20 years ago, it was a little odd, because you go to a cantor, a Moroccan cantor, and then all of a sudden he hears a saxophone, and it's very loud, and it's like he's not used to it. So I remember feeling very, very stressed and this is the biggest mistake of my life. Like the first rehearsal, second rehearsal. What have I done? How am I going to get out of it? And then it works. So, or sometimes it just works less, but it takes more time. But these are examples of like stretching beyond even the limit of the genre, or bringing two cultures or genres together. Yeah, and
Yeah. So, stretching outside of your comfort zone, in your 20s, early 20s, you moved to New York, right? Like 93,
92.
92, 92. What brought you to New York? Is it because it's a natural progression of like, if I'm a jazz musician, I got to be in New York or in Paris?
absolutely. I mean, it was kind of a dream, It was, Israel was different then. I mean, now it's more
International.
international and big. Everybody's doing stuff. Back then, it was a village. Tel Aviv was a village in the late '80s.
Yeah.
And I mean, nice village, but and then no one really played jazz. I mean, there's a few people, and then I watched all these movies, and
But that's a huge step. I mean, I've done
That's
the
a
same
huge
step. But
step.
like coming from what you call the village, right, to probably the capital, one of the top
Yeah.
places for jazz in the world, and you walk into the first audition or session or jam set, whatever
Horrifying.
how the hell, like, how do you carry yourself? You're 23 years old. How
I was
do you
21.
21?
Not
How do you get the
even,
courage
yeah.
to kind of step into those?
I don't know. I mean, I guess you have to be 20 for these things. I just knew that something. I love Israel, but I knew that it wasn't for me. Like, I just knew it. I figured I was into jazz, and I was dreaming, and I was, I have all these records and watching these movies about New York and the yellow taxi. I've never been to the United States before.
Wow.
And I'm like, I have this dream of I'm going to immigrate to New York.
Yeah, I remember when I came here as a tourist for the first time. I was 21, and I was sitting reading The Village Voice. You remember?
Yeah, of course.
Reading The Village Voice in Union Square, and I looked around. I was like, I gotta live here. Like, there's something
Yeah.
about. But I wanna. You walk. Okay, I get it. You're an immigrant story. You came to New York. You fell in love through movies, stories. Obviously, you love to jazz and music. But then you walk in, and there's giants here, right?
Yeah.
And how the hell do you how do you get the courage and the audacity to walk into a session when you're 21 to play jazz? Is it about connections? Were you building, was there a place to hang out in so you get to know people, or just literally you walk in and you say, okay, I'm here, I'm ready to play? How do you do that?
Well, honestly, I had no idea. I really had no idea. I had one friend here. His great friend, Danny Rosenfeld. His dad lived here. He had an apartment. He was like, you're welcome to stay with me. I went to the new school. We applied. I got a little scholarship. I had a visa, so I had a school and I had a place to stay, and a very little.
What else do you
Very
need in
little
New York?
money.
Exactly,
Very
yeah.
little money
Yeah.
that just I ran out very quickly, but that was that, And I remember it was horrifying. I mean, it was very cold. Never experienced this cold weather in Israel. It was January, and I looked around. And I was like, what have I done? Like, what have I done? I mean, what is this building? Where am I going to find jazz here? I remember my first thought was like, where am I going to find these people? I mean, this place is huge. And, day after day, you go to school, then you get, oh my God, all these people from all over the world, all the teachers, New York has such an attitude. And I felt tiny. And, but the thing about jazz, it has a community built in to wherever you go. So, you just kind of follow, hey, there's this club and that club and this, like today, and then you just kind of meet people and, hey, sound good. So it's very, very slow. How did I have, I don't know, I just realized I'm here.
Was it like a moment of breakthrough, like a moment when you I made it? Not
There
made it
was
100% because it's a journey. I know that
it's like steps.
But what's one of the first steps you remember from coming to New York that was like, you know what, I can play on this level?
I mean, first of all, the first weeks, I remember I just played anywhere. I wasn't afraid. I was just like, I just want to play. Let me play.
And by the way, I want to point to it because, again, our conversation is about top performing. That level of detachment from, you were committed to play. You didn't care where, how much they pay, if they pay,
No.
what time it is. I want to master my craft and I want to crack into this market called the jazz scene in New York. So you would go anywhere, right?
Anywhere, every day, basically. Like, it was not one day that I stayed home. And just played with anybody, everybody, and I just sensed, oh, these are the people. And then, people tell you, oh, you sound good, you want to play, da, da, da. Oh, there's another session tomorrow, it was like that. And a moment, I mean, it took a while, and then I went to school, and in school, I met people. I think it's true people. I met
Yes.
my friends still today. That we're still friends, and we're the same. Oh, we can do this. Let's do it together. And then there's you meet people obviously, and
You're one of the I would say founding voices or sounds of Smalls, right? Which is a very
Yeah.
now it's very famous
We start-
jazz musician jazz club in the West Village. That I remember when I was there in the '90s, it was magical. I remember one session, 2 a.m., 3 a.m. Suddenly Bob Dylan showed up, or I think it was Bob. Yeah, he just played something because with a bunch of people trying a new song he was working on something. It was very magical.
It was a magical place.
Yeah.
I mean, I think when I played at Smalls, I mean, we started the place, literally played the first nights, and I knew the owner. I ran a few of the nights the week, and that was an opportunity. So I think when that happened, I was pretty early on, 2-3 years after I came, and then, I mean, I guess the most obviously is when people wrote about me, or Smalls became known, and New York Times writers came, and there was an article, and everybody called me like, oh, you got a write up. I was like,
Was that your moment of you realized you made it?
I didn't know anything. I mean, back then so much. I didn't know what PR was, or what. I never read the New York Times, I think, probably before. And somebody called me and said, hey, you have somebody wrote about you, and I was nice, like wow. And then I got calls from record labels. It was like the old days.
Wow.
It was the end of an era. We experienced that end of an era, the end of the '90s, and about 2000, everything changed. So it was that little of the old school days when you get a write up and people call you and and all these labels and da da da. So
Did it impact your? Because when you quote unquote make it, there's some naturally people either slow down. They're like, oh, I made it. I don't have to work as hard, or the opposite. Like now, this is my time to hit to double on my efforts and my exposure. Did it impact your behavior when you became quote unquote famous or known in that scene?
I had, first of all, I had two things going. I had a musical artistic goal, very specific. I had a bunch of saxophones, and I was
Yeah, you did a non-piano pieces, right? That's one
piano,
of
I
the
had
things that
four
remember
sax. It
people
was very
talk about.
avant-garde, very stretchy, and people responded to it. And I was pushing limits, and getting my artistic thing was very, very strong. Like, I think that's where I came from. Like, still today, when I think of success, I'm like, oh, can I write the piece that I want to write? Is it sounding as good as I can? And there's always been like, am I getting paid for it? People hear it.
You still have to pay the rent in New York, right?
Yeah, which is getting
which is
higher.
quite high, exactly.
And also, I need to perform. I need an orchestra. I need to pay the musicians. Da, da, da. So there's always these two things. Back then, it was mostly the artistic, but it was a big high, like for a young person.
Did it mess you up?
I mean, definitely put stress.
Yeah, I mean, in your
Huge
20s,
stress.
right? Maybe late 20s.
'Cause I had
Suddenly
no money.
You're like, oh, look at me. I'm like, it definitely
Yeah, and everybody
messed up
was
with
like,
your ego, right?
messed up because all of a sudden they were comparing me to older stars, and oh, you're the next thing, and you know how it happens. And then and you learn that those things keep shifting. So it put a lot of stress, because I was like, okay, here I'm doing it. I'm going to be on this label, on that label, and then this doesn't work, and then another big write up that happened 2 years or a year later, and that's really like, then I got signed to a very big label, and then definitely I felt on the top of the world, and nothing can hurt me. You know what I mean? But
I'm untouchable.
Untouchable. Definitely, like people, when I meet people from back then, they're like, oh, I remember you were da 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 da. I don't really remember this time that clearly. I was smoking a lot of weed too, which I don't anymore.
That will help, yeah, exactly.
So I was definitely on a journey, but I have to say that it did not affect the music. I always wrote more and more, and I developed. But I wasn't. Now that I think about it, I didn't have the balance. Like, I had no management. I didn't know anything about PR. I didn't know what PR was. I just played, and it was organically, which I also tell young people and myself, the best things happen organically. Still, you know what I mean? If you're good, if you do something that's meaningful, and you touch a core of something, things will happen.
Yeah, but okay, let me push back on this one.
Sure. Please.
I totally hear what you're saying, but it sounds like you had a substantial amount of discipline to play all the time. So it wasn't just
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm just going to trust the universe
No,
and
no,
it's
no,
going to
no,
come
no,
my
no.
way. You
No,
worked
not
your
at all.
butt off, to make things happen, right?
Intensely. Yeah,
Okay.
I call it you're in your vibe, you're in your zone, when
Yeah.
and I lost it after. I mean, now, in my 50s, that these things come and go. It's not back then. I was like I was flying. I
Yeah,
was Superman, I thought this will last forever and this is the way life is. And I didn't have it before. So it was this chunk of time that was super intense. And then I fell because I got dropped and life changed in New
Okay, so
York.
tell me, that's much more interesting to me than success,
yeah.
and I know how successful you are. But tell me about that failure, or was it a process? Was it just luck? Did you mess up? Did you become too high on your ego? What's the thing that
Very
and now
interesting.
we're older now. We
Very
can actually
interesting.
speak about it.
Very interesting.
Freely.
I think that it's basically the way life works. Easy come, easy goes. You know what I mean? Like you get it and you can lose it type of situation. Like I said, and I emphasize, I didn't plan any of it. It wasn't like later in life and you hire management, and there was like only music, only intense, artistic, and being very, very disciplined, as you said. And I didn't know when I got to those places, then politics and people and who likes who and I had no idea how it works. I didn't know how major label, I didn't know anything about the corporate world. I had no idea how those things work. I thought I was still in a magic situation world. And I think...
Did you have an illusion that if you're just talented enough and hardworking enough, things will work out? You didn't understand the politics of becoming a known artist? Is that what it is?
I didn't understand anything, but what happened was also, you call it luck or whatever. That moment, the year 2099, everything changed. Whoever remembers, like the world, the corporations, of the media changed. And labels were. It was after the CDs were on and going into streaming, the big early beginning. So people were dropped, labels were canceled. It was that moment. So had I known more or been more connected, yes, I could have maybe survived it. But I was in a place where I was just playing music and I was dropped. And
is that what you went back to? Because I know you went back to Israel,
so
right?
then I was like, it was shocking, but still I can take a loss, and I was, okay, interesting. But after that year went by, and I was like, oh, wow, I'm not flying anymore. That, all of a sudden, like, ooh, what's going on here? That feeling. And I had to, so I think going back to Israel was like, okay. And then I had another situation when I was offered to compose an opera, or I met people that took me in another direction. And I was like, I realized that I need to study more. So it was two things. First, I was like, okay, I was definitely... okay, that high is gone. You're not on top of the world. There's going to be a next person. You didn't really enter. Like I was recorded my first album for Universal Music and dropped. So it's never it wasn't out. And life changed, and then it was 2001. The whole situation, and Israel had its some war. So everything was like, so I felt like and I wanted to study. So for me, I always go back to, okay, what's my next artistic goal? Because again, success essentially it's your body of work, and I still believe that. And what you do with your life. I mean, okay, I had a failure. What am I going to do? Like, sit on it, try to. I figured.
Well, you could have been easily, but you could have become a has-been, right? Like you couldn't be like, oh, when I lived in New York and become like a teacher somewhere.
Yeah,
but there was something about it. Walk me through it, because I really want to understand. There was something that kept on pulling you to creating more stuff. What's the thing that pulled you out of that funk, right? Because I mean, look, if you look at business, you look at anything, sports people are doing very well. They get signed with someone major and suddenly they get hurt or they get injured or they're not as disciplined as they used to be and they get dropped. Most people by far will be done. They'll walk away and be like, okay, I had an amazing 20-something career. And you sit with them when they're 50, then talk about, 30 years, I used to do this, I used to do that. But there was something that pulled you towards keep on creating, growing, to keep on developing your talent and your.
I think that goes back to maybe what I spoke about, those talents or that basic feeling of like, if I don't mind failing, or I mean, I mind it, but I can. There's another way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if the classical didn't work, then the jazz. If that didn't work, like. And also, my big passion is creating music. And I was like, oh, I'm not good enough yet. You know, I need to study. There's so much more music.
How old were you when you?
29.
That's amazing because it's something most of the people takes them way more years and experience to realize they're not good enough. Actually, they become. So the fact that you actually were like, I actually need to go back to the.
I need to go back and study Bach and back to the thing and study my own music. And I went back to Israel. Also personal reason, but I was everything, happens. And this old teacher of mine called me, hey, we're looking for a bass. I called him and like, I want to study composition because I wanted to study classical composition. I was like, I need to go back to school. I mean, I'm good, I'm celebrated, whatever, but I need more knowledge. I need more tools. And he was like, yeah, well, I have. And I was like, can I do half a year? And he was like, no, you have to commit. Like, okay.
Was it difficult because you played at like major stages? Now you have to go back to the classroom.
It was difficult
in your 30s and learn like basic stuff.
Okay, interesting. So definitely, I mean, it was a few things. It was good to be back in Israel. I mean, I wanted to because my then girlfriend later became wife, Liat, was living there, and I was like, okay, you know what? Maybe it's a good chance to do something different in life. I had 10 years in New York or 9 years. People thought I was insane because I had a career, and I was like, what are you moving to Israel for? I was like, I don't know. I mean, career didn't mean much to me. Not then. I mean, even today, it's like more like that's my path. I mean, I need to learn how to be a better musician. And he offered me a job teaching, which I never had a job before or after. That's the only chunk of time in my life that I actually had a job. It was very nice. Met great people, and I taught jazz bass and studied classical composition at the same time, and I studied Arabic music, and I got back to all the Israeli songs, and it was kind of back to roots. It was
almost like you're charging your batteries.
Yes, but now I was 30, and everybody was 20, or whatever, younger, and it was funny. It was interesting. I was like. Definitely the ego moment where I had to be like, okay, there was 2 years before I thought I was the next thing, and and I'm like, everybody's raving about what I can do, and now I'm like sitting with people that don't know me, or maybe they heard that I'm good, and I have to do homework, and but I think it was good. I mean, maybe I took it too far, like to the other side.
In what way?
I humbled myself completely.
So it sounds like there's like a thin line between humble and suppressing yourself. So maybe there was a moment when you almost suppress yourself.
Almost, because I had to.
Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe that's the kind of path I got to take.
I mean, it was more like breathe. I started reading some Buddhism and Tao Te Ching. That was the first time that I got into these types of way of thinking and. Breathe. It's not all about getting, you know what I mean? Fire, that New York, whatever, getting it. And, it was like, okay, let's see what else is there. And then studying and like, oh, I don't know this. So I need to study and I need to get into my head. And I'm talking hours and hours of composition and counterpoint and harmony and like really training myself in a classical way. I was ready though. 30, I think, is a correct age to study these things. When I was in my early 20s, I didn't have the patience because I just wanted to play. But in Israel, and getting back to our roots and learning the songs and Moroccan music, and I started reaching out, and it was an incredible time. I also had time. I was paid, and I could just compose for 10 hours a day. I had to work 2 days a week. So it was very, 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 very good.
But then you came back to New York. I mean, right? Like,
4 years later,
New York was calling you, right?
Yeah, no. It didn't work. I couldn't become an Israeli again. I was already a New Yorker, and you know it. You know what I mean? It's like after studying and teaching, I was like, okay, you teach another year, it's the same. And Israel is very small, and I loved it, but it was like every time I came to New York, I'd be like, oh, okay.
There's something magical here, right?
Magical, and it's my identity.
Yeah.
Okay, they know who I am. I'm a musician. It's like, can't explain it.
Yeah. So let's jump from that. So, because you're now, or in the last few years since you came back, and it's been a while now, you've been not only just playing, but actually creating music and running your own bands, right? Or something. Yeah. So I want to talk about casting for a second, okay? Because for me, that's leadership.
Yeah.
And I'm really curious about finding out the way you think when it comes to performance, when it comes to success and failure. It's not just about music. I think jazz has a lot of lessons in it that we can use and implement in other areas of our lives, right? So you put together a band. Is that the right word? A group, a band. What makes you choose particular people?
Wow, this is it's very specific. Yeah, it's like this is something I can do. And when we always had this conversation about business, I always remember telling you that in music I understand how to do it because I've learned. I mean, first of all, I have that talent, and that's what I do. And I see it's like any other thing. It's like a team of people working together. It's a lot of intuition. It's knowledge.
Do you have to listen to that person before you put them? Okay.
Not only
so
listen,
it's
you
almost
have
like
to
a
know
job
them.
interview. Like you go and listen to someone. You're like, I like the sound. I like how where they took that piece to.
Yeah.
So I want to work with
and
them.
it's a lot of like you sense. Oh, this person is like.
Okay, I'm gonna give you a hard time. Okay.
Okay.
Because I can't do anything with sense, right? I understand that maybe, and again, just giving you a little pushback. Maybe it's okay to understand, look, there's some talent you're born with, or there's a sense or instinct you're born with or develop, right? But I want to remove the mystery. Like Unmask is all about removing the mystery. So walk me through that sense. Like what is actually, do you see that makes you go like, I want to work with that person. I want to have him on the piano or have her on the, drums or whatever it is.
Well, definitely the passion, the level of passion. How they are connected to what they do, and the closer to what I have, it's the better. I mean, some people, are just in different level of their journey, but I think how passionate they are, and how disciplined. Because you can hear a musician, they've worked. You see a person doing a job, like, oh, they.
Oh, that's great. So you can't wing it. You can't just like.
No.
Yeah, you can actually when you listen to someone, you're like, this person is a hardworking musician.
Because to play this way, you had to go through many hours of disciplined practice.
What about discipline when in their personal life? Like if someone is late to rehearsals,
Musicians
always have that image of like, whatever.
That's a little bit of a problem because you sometimes the person that you think has the great passion and the most discipline is also the least together in their personal life. So that's,
Do you choose not to work with them because of that? Or is that a big no-no for you? Or you don't care?
You need to try. Okay, we go on the road, we do a few shows, we see how it goes. And then many times, unfortunately, in my life, I worked with people that I thought they were the best for the job, but I couldn't deal with them.
You couldn't rely on them, yeah.
Couldn't rely. They would. At the end of the day, I think the personality is in art and music as well. It's a part of it. I mean, it's who you are. It's like it's a team. A band is a team. Yeah. It doesn't work if somebody is this solo, just wants a solo vibe. It doesn't work.
So you put the right people in the seat, or at least you hope so, because you listen to them, you see the discipline, you hear the talent, and then how do you orchestrate like the relationship? Because again, thinking about business, for example, like it's a team, right? You put them together. Some of them never play together, right? So you rehearse a few times. I'm assuming. Do you rehearse also? Okay.
Of course, we rehearse a lot. I mean, a lot of the times you would hire people in couples or like, oh, this is my friend. It's good to have in a band people that like each other. Like, oh, I love this piano player. So you introduce by the same people. So you develop a family, essentially. And many times I brought people together that didn't stay together for years. That's good
so cool.
Good to see. Like, and sometimes it doesn't really work. Sometimes it's less. But the times that it worked, it is incredible. And then sometimes these relationships last for decades, and sometimes they don't. But it's basically like layering.
And do you tell them what to do? Just go back to the structure of jazz.
Okay,
when you put together a group, and I know there's like you said, a framework or some kind of tracks, but then you take off the track for a little bit in the solo part, you go back. So when do they know when to come back to the group versus the individual piece?
Well, as a band leader in jazz, You definitely, first of all, you're a leader. So, like any other leader, you have to have that comfortable feeling and the spirit, you know? Otherwise, why would they follow you? So, I think it's like any other profession. And then the technical stuff, yeah, you have to, it's very psychologically involved because you can't tell somebody what to do, but you need to tell him what to do without telling him, you know?
Yeah, you got to trust them.
You
Right?
gotta-
Like
you
a
gotta
big part
tru- you
of
gotta
the theme
trust
I
them,
hear
yeah.
through the conversation
have
is
to-
like you got to trust them,
And they
because-
trust you.
Yes.
So trust is a big
because they
thing.
go always back to you, right? As the leader, you always
Yeah.
they count on you to kind of
But
lead the
I'm
group.
the kind of leader, band leader, that I want my people to shine. Like I'm not afraid. Like I'm not trying to like have
Steal
them
the show.
No,
Yeah.
because I write the music, so I know the music is mine. I'm the bass player. I don't need to be on top, and I'm pretty secure with my situation. I know I'm good, and I'm a good musician. So it's not about me necessarily. It's about the team. So I will always try to play something that they like to play. You know, I go with their talents as well. You know, if this trumpet player has this type of sound and he likes this kind of music, or I'll go with them.
Can you push them further than what they hope? Like during the session, actually, could you be like, come on, like, is there like
Absolutely.
signs or something you
Well,
say, come
I
on,
do it with the music.
go
yeah.
for it. you
Yeah.
know?
Well, it happens in two ways. First, the music that I write. I mean, a lot of times, like the last project I did, this trumpet player, she called me, this is too many notes. I mean, I can't, it's too high. I don't know. I never play this. And I was like, don't worry. I'm here to help you. It's,
Trust the piece, trust
yeah,
yourself.
It'll be fine. We're not going to suffer. At the end, she was like, she told me, can't believe I played everything and it was not hard and I played higher than I usually. It's like, I told you, because it makes sense. It all makes sense. The music makes sense together, and musicians feel great when they're pushed and they do something they never tried before. And it happens when everything works together and it's supporting parts. You know what I mean? It's like, technically, if you write a high note for a trumpet, but it's supported well with the other band, it's easier than if you write it without support.
I'm amazed how close it is to any other things that you do
Yeah.
in dynamic group. Like,
Yeah.
when the group works well, they give the space, the foundation to take higher risks.
I mean,
you know,
it's
and
really
everybody
about the
supports
group.
each other.
It's
yeah.
really about the group.
Yeah.
And if you look at orchestras, classical orchestras, they don't improvise. It's all about the group, how the conductor talks to the people, how the people in the sections work. It's teams. That's what you hear at the end of
Yeah.
the day. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no individual. If you hear a band, you hear a band, you know? And as a composer, the composition itself supports itself. So I think harmony is necessary. Unless you want to.
That's a good T-shirt. Harmony is necessary.
Please, harmony
exactly.
now.
Exactly. Okay, so that takes me to the. So you do a lot of writing now, right? You're a composer.
Yeah.
Do you hear the music in your head?
Yeah. I hear it in my head. I compose all the time. So I play it on piano mostly. That's my favorite.
Even though it's your bass is your
My bass is that's where my main instrument.
you're known
I'm a
as a bass
virtuoso.
player,
Yeah,
right? Not as a piano player.
No,
right?
I don't perform on piano. But
Yeah.
I play guitar. I play oud. Also, I perform on oud. Piano is my main instrument to compose. I compose. I record myself. I do also. I have notations. I do it by hand. I have my app on the computer. But I definitely hear it in my head, and a lot. Like yesterday, I was telling a friend, I didn't really work, but I really worked. You know, I took walks and I went to the gym, and I figured out a lot about one piece of music.
Wow.
And I was like,
Do you think it's necessary to kind of step away from the piece
Oh, absolutely.
to digest it and kind of think about it in a different way and then come back to it?
Composing is all about back
Yeah.
and forth.
I don't think it's more than composing. I think that when you actually deal with a problem or challenge or creating, can be business consulting, and be in teams, that when you actually walk away from it, suddenly you see insights that were not there when you were in the middle of it.
I mean, I'm big on meditating and taking a walk. I mean, I think a lot of creators and a lot of thinkers, they start a day with a walk or walk in the woods or take whatever, stroll in Tel Aviv, whatever
Yeah,
you're into, or New York. Like, I like walking in New York. Even today, taking the train here, got me thinking. Like I was supposed to, I wanted to listen to music, but then I just heard one of my pieces in my head, and I was like, oh, this is how it should go. And
so
yesterday
great.
I had the same thing, and I'm like, wow, okay, I didn't work, but I worked. Because I'm still.
So I have another question about that because so you have a vision, you hear the piece in your mind, or right, and then you have to make other people do it. So how do you lead them? Because what you hear in your head is probably not what they're playing. Maybe it's very close to it, but it's
That's
not
a big
exactly the same.
question.
So how as a manager, like again, I'm taking the music element out of it because I think it's so universal what you're saying. How do you have a vision, and how do you translate it to a team, understanding it's not going to be exactly what you see in your mind or on a piece of paper or on the computer?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. It's definitely never going to be the same. Sometimes it's better.
That's great.
Thank you. When it's better, it's
Well, not
life
if
is
your
good.
ego is in the way, right? Like if your ego in the way, like,
you have to work on yourself. But basically, I think the leader, like it's the spirit. You know what I mean? You have to generate. I remember you in our office back in the day, or just you have to like be that person. People
the conductor.
follow. Otherwise, why would they follow you?
Yeah.
There's no reason to follow somebody without that energy. So first of all is the energy. And, and it's my energy. I worked on it my whole life. I try to give good energy and support people and push them. Then it's just like, give and take, it depends on your style. I like to give them a lot to try, and then I will tell them when it's not correct. It's a basically a fine line, and then they have to be the correct people too. I mean, again,
Yes, casting,
casting is without. I mean,
because Xanathing said, a movie is like 90% of it is casting. If you
if
you have the right actor, you just turn on the camera
I'm
and let them
telling
do
you,
their
I
thing.
just experienced it recently with two different situations where one was the good casting and one was good but not the perfect one, and it's not the magic. I mean, so it's really I mean, sometimes you can't help it. Sometimes you make mistakes.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes you think that you didn't make a mistake. I mean, it's right, but you weren't focused enough, and but yeah, when you have 30 people in front of you and they all need to pay, I mean, it's just like a lot of breathing, and they're going to be frustrated because they don't understand sometimes. And you want them to understand because you want them to be happy, but sometimes they're not going to always be happy. Sometimes it's going to be like, one rehearsal is going to be like, you have to work on this, and you don't understand it, but you'll understand it in 3 rehearsals.
You know that's going to turn out. So you have this discipline and demand from them to keep on working on it until they get it right. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, and I'm doing the best job I can to prepare it for them, to make it as clear as possible. First of all, when I present it, it has to be if I know if I'm not ready, like, or to what degree I'm ready. The more ready I am, and the more clear I am, easier it's going to be.
I want to jump. When you were young, when you when you were just a player. Are there any band leaders or people who inspired you that you learned from them, because now you're in that seat, now you're a composer, now you're putting bands together? Is there someone specifically in your 20s that made a big impact on you in the way to manage that dialogue, that conversation on stage?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
What was their? You can say their names, doesn't matter. But I'm saying, what was the thing that made you like, wow? They're great leaders. They're great musicians.
I didn't. Yeah, it was. I mean, it was people that are a little older than me and my group age mostly. The way I came up here, and I remember Peter Bernstein is a great guitar player, phenomenal person. He was one of those young people he was always kind of older, in his spirit, and he seemed to understand like how things should work, and it's very hard to see, but I think he wrote good music, which was like, oh, okay, I'm presented with good music to play it's great. So I know that you have to bring some good, makes sense. Music makes sense. It's not only good, it makes sense. Your part is cool. You're happy to be a part of this team, because it's a good team, and he's just strong, not in a forceful way, but he's you can follow him. I remember, like, I'll follow this guy wherever.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. There was something about him, the quality of the ingredients, and authentic.
It was authentic. It was the quality of the ingredients. It was authentic. It had the whole. It just made sense. You know, I was like, okay, I want to be in this team. You know, I want to be a part. It wasn't. I remember I was like, I don't want to lead anything. Let me be a part of a great team, because I think before you become a leader, it helps to know what it is to be in a team. I mean, it's two different talents. I think some people are much more of team players, but also I realized after a few years that I'm not. It's not for me. I need to lead because I have other ideas and it's not enough or whatever. But at that moment, and I played with other few people, that I was like, wow, their vision is clear. Like, their vision is clear. Wow, they know which tunes. They know how to tell me what to do. Like, if I do the wrong thing, they tell me exactly, but they're still, I follow them. And there's something like, I don't know, that leader situation, which is, you know, it's hard to point. I understand you trying to unmask it.
Yeah.
And me too. All of our lives, we try to, because, you know, you could just say, spirit, but of course it's more than that. Otherwise, how would we practice?
Yeah. Then if you just say the spirit, then you leave this myth behind it, and you can't really practice. What the hell do I do with
also,
it?
a spirit is something that you can get to, you know, because, but I think these people were very focused and very authentic, and it's just like, oh, okay, I know what to do. Like, people when they come to work for you, they want to know what to do, you know?
Yeah.
I think the worst thing is when you don't tell them or it's not clear. So I felt very together in those situations. I was like, oh, I could. And when I had the wrong kind of leader, it was like, it's all over the place. I don't trust his judgment.
So therefore,
or
you don't
her
trust
judgment.
yourself. You don't trust. Yeah.
So it's not fun, and you see the other people don't trust him, and so it's like it loses that glue.
Yeah.
You know, and I didn't like that. You know, and it was like became like a situation that I don't want to be a part of.
That's great. You know, Omer, just to wrap things up, it sounds like you love your failures as much as you love your successes, right? Is that?
I mean, I had
maybe that
of,
is jazz. I mean, that's jazz. But it sounds like you give the same way this conversation to failing than actually to success.
Yeah, you can learn much more from failures, I think. Also, I think the more you fail, I mean, people anyways, they remember the good stuff. So I think it's just a way to understand what didn't work, you know, and
so lesson taken from that failure is not just like, so you don't dwell in the failing.
I mean,
you actually, what's a lesson I can take and kind of
I do
get
my
better.
best. I do my best.
Well,
You know,
right?
Some failures are bigger than others,
Yes,
you know,
of course.
for sure, and it takes longer to come back.
Yeah.
You know, but I just sometimes it's not, when in the good days I don't even see it as failures. It's just didn't work. I mean, it worked, but then it stopped working. You know what
so
I mean?
it sounds okay. So here's what I just heard. So when you not succeed, you see it all didn't work. Okay, when you fail, it's like this emotional thing that comes with the not succeeding, right? So
Yeah.
yes, there's moments when things don't go the way you want, right?
Absolutely.
The difference between this and failing is that failing has an emotional thing to it, like but it's the same thing. They both didn't
It's
go the way
same
you
thing.
wanted. You know?
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
I think I took it also from you and other people. Like you know, you're an example. Ravit Karlani, great singer. The Blues is always going. You know, and it doesn't matter what they get into. I'm just like, oh, well, people come back. People do more. People do. Or it's like, okay, so who am I to like whine that this thing didn't work? I mean, maybe the next thing is is tomorrow. You know, so it's definitely, you know, it takes a lot, but I think focusing on creating more and knowing that there's more energy, and I think you have to give some. I mean, some people are optimistic, you know, and I have that optimistic side most of the time, you know. So I wake up and I'm like, there's going to be another day. There's going to be another option. There's going to be another something, and I'll make it. Anyways, I think counting on yourself that you can make it happen puts that emotional thing on the side.
Yeah,
I think the emotional thing is when you lose trust that you can make it happen. If I made it happen, I'll make it happen again. You know, that kind
That's
of thing.
great. Okay, so here's the take the points I'm taking from this conversation. Correct me if I'm wrong. So it seems like discipline is a critical part, and that discipline comes from a pure or a very strong passion to what you're doing, right? So passion to music in your case, right? And then, but it's not sufficient. It's a good beginning, but it's a lot about practice. And the other thing is being a team player. So it seems like you can have a lot of passion, but if you want to play in a group, and most people play in a group, whether it's whatever music it is or whatever business you do, rarely you do something is so isolated that you don't interact with other people. That's a big part of it. And one of my favorite takes for myself out of this conversation is that you're very playful with it. You really look at it almost like a scientist. Like, so when scientists try different things and they fail, they go, "Oh, let's stop." The nature of developing medicine is to keep on trying things and failing until you get it right. So it seems like that's part of your philosophy.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's correct. I mean, on my good days, yeah. On the good days, today is a good day.
Yeah.
So
Well, on your bad day, you know it's going to change eventually, right? Like when you said, there's moments when it takes a little longer, but
sometimes you have to also allow yourself the emotions and yeah, I mean there's pain, and there's sometimes you feel joy and pleasure. So but
no
it's
pain, no gain.
Yeah, but it's beyond that. It's like what you say. It's like I know in the down moments I have to remember that this is the way, And I had the moment a week ago. I was like, oh wow. And I should remind myself, okay, no, it's just the way, and but I think it's the scientist way, and also it's because I look at it as a musical thing. What really keeps me going is that I'm creating new music and another approach, and sometimes, and we always want to present it to the world, and we always need that orchestra, we all need to get paid, and we all need to be known, So it's always like. But what keeps me going is artistically being focused.
Yeah.
When I'm artistically focused, everything is good, and it'll work out because I'm happy, I'm more relaxed, and people that have the what I need, whether it's the money to pay the orchestra, they will join me, because then I'm more of a captain of the correct situation.
It's a really never-ending journey.
No.
All right. On this note, we're going to end our journey. Omer Avital, really, thank you so much. I know you for so many years, and every time I speak with you, we get a deeper and another layer of your talent, your ability, and it's really great. So thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Of course.
A wonderful conversation. Thank you.
Every episode, the idea is to provide some tools and exercises for people as they're growing and developing their top performance mentality and ability. So we call it playbook. So what is a playbook? This time I want to talk about what it means to be a top performer. Over the years, I spoke with thousands of people, led seminars, workshops, taught in different universities. And after a while, I could walk into a room and I can, quote unquote, smell who is a top performer. Top performer is people who are going beyond the average results. Most people, they don't do much. It's not a criticism, just a reality of it. And when they do it out of either fear or inspiration. And inspiration, the challenge with inspiration is it's like sugar. You get very inspired, you get excited about something, but then when the moment the sugar is gone, you are also gone with it. So how many people register and sign up for a gym, and then by the third week they cancel or they stop going? By the way, the gym's business is based on that, expecting more people to sign, not to show up. So that's not a top performer. Top performer is someone who's actually accomplished ongoingly more results and better results than the average person. They have this ability to have high level of integrity. When they say they're going to do something, they do it, and they get fascinated by what will it take to be better and better and better. A top performer is someone who thinks about the task ahead as part of the journey. Now, as a top performer, there's also risk because you will be failing. When you operate outside of your comfort zone, when you take risks, when you challenge yourself in the environment, you will fail. Top performer is someone who sees failing as part of the game. They don't get stuck on it. Some failures, and I've experienced many of them, is things you get stuck with for a while, but in the big picture, really understand that to have the ability to develop the mindset of a top performer, you have to look at your failures as part of the game. You can never just win. If you just win, it means that you're playing a very, very small game. That's the playbook for this week.